Do I make you feel like the head, like the leader, or like I will follow you?
Tonight, yeah, absolutely. Reality is, it really depends on your mood and your emotion. I mean, I call it what it is. Like, when you get on your independent trip, there's nothing I can do or say that you're gonna listen to. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, I guess how I respond to you or how I come across to you. If you take a look that I gave you the wrong way, or if I said something that sounded too harsh to you, that's it, man. You're shutting down, you're shutting me out. And there's no more like, hey, you're the head of the household. It's more like, I don't even know if I want to be in this house with you. So I'd say, 50-50. When it comes to the children, I'd say it's 100%, like all the time. Like I never feel like when we're in front of the kids that there is an issue with like, dad's in charge. Like I don't ever feel like you undermine my authority in front of the kids, which is a huge thing. But I think when it's just me and you sometimes, and that's not to say that kids don't even see that, because kids see everything. So, it's like there's a lot of opportunities for improvement, I would say. Trying to sugarcoat that. At the same time, you do a really good job of like pouring on the praise or making a really nice post online or saying something really nice to me or about me publicly, or, lifting me up, and I appreciate that. But then like when your anger kicks in, you saying all kinds of crazy things to me, and when we're alone, it just kind of negates everything. Because to me, what matters to me is what you give me when no one else is looking, not when everybody else can see you. You know what I'm saying? So, just the consistency in the message, or I guess I should say the inconsistency in the message really makes me question whether or not I truly am your lead or your head. But as far as like how I feel about the family, I consider myself an alpha male, so I always feel like I'm in control or in charge of what's going on and protect my family or do what's best for my family, regardless of your mood or emotion. How I handle you is sometimes just hands off because she's out from underneath me right now. She ain't doing nothing I'm gonna say right now. So again, it's a mix. It's definitely a mix.
So are there any differences or difficulties in interracial marriage? Have you faced any, dealt with any, been treated differently?
I won't say, well, as far as treated differently, we get the looks and the stares. At first it was funny and cute, and now it's annoying, and sometimes I have to be intentional to not look at people when we are together, because you get lots of looks and stares. But as far as differences, I don't think necessarily interracial differences, but I will say there are intercultural differences.
Yeah, 100%. It's
so
cultural differences, damn right it is, and it's upraising. It isn't, regardless of race or color. It's just kind of your environment, what you brought up in, what your norms were.
Right, but from a society standpoint, what it looks like is interracial differences. Because I can say being raised on the southeast side of Houston and predominantly black. I think in my high school it may have been one white person. Like that's how, and all of my schools have been that way. And I think you're done a disservice because it's ignorance. All you know is what you know, right?
Yeah.
And so your exposure, so you're limited. And so it wasn't really until I went to Texas A&M and I started seeing the way people did certain things. And I've heard it preached about certain principles, but no lie, like being raised around where materialism was the way, and coming up new Decan wives or Tommy Hilfiger and that kind of thing. And even my children can tend to be materialistic, and Neil is more, he's rational, he's about the budget. But again, I don't necessarily think that's an interracial thing. I think that's intercultural. It's a cultural thing. It truly is. It's about your upbringing and your raising. But I do think that people look at us a certain way because we are the white and black couple. It's like a token thing. Sometimes I've gotten the question of like, oh, you found you a white man, or you stepped outside to, like, I chose a different race because the different race was the better. you know. And that, I think, is not true. I know it's not true. People are people. There are good white people, good black people, you know, good Hispanic people. So it is what it is. But I do think that from a societal standpoint, if I'm honest, you know, and even African American males have made comments like that, like, oh, you had to change over or switch over. So yeah.
So if I'm being honest, no one ever makes comments to me like that. I don't know, maybe I just come across as a person that not to say things like that too, but nobody really approaches me with that kind of attitude. Seeing the looks and the sideways stares and stuff sometimes, I guess I've dealt with it for so long, it's normal. My 3 children are mixed from a previous marriage. So I think as far as the challenges in an interracial marriage, there's another aspect that comes with like the children, right? Because their parents are opposites, and you're not always expecting, like the kids at school, you know, they've had some interesting stories before, like people didn't believe that you were my dad, or people didn't believe that, like, you know, that was my mom, or this group is mean to me and this group is, and so like some of what we experience lightly gets passed on to the children. A little bit more heavy burden, but
that's a good point. Our eldest, she's that way. She deals with the colorism, like, you know, the not being white enough or not being black enough, and the inability to fit in, something I can't even relate to, didn't even know it was a thing. There are some things that the children deal with by being biracial. So yeah.
So Tiff, when things get hard between us and we're not vibing, or we're disagreement, or you're angry with me, why do you always try to quit? Why is it so easy for you to just throw in the towel and say, I don't want to be married to you anymore?
I think it's a route of least resistance in that moment. And I don't mean it, but, and they say when you're angry, you say things that you mean. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that. That's a loaded question, because I've not quit in anything that I've ever done. I see everything through. Even if I leave something and come back to it later, I feel like I see everything through. But it's different when it comes to, I noticed that even in a previous marriage, just dealing with men in general, for me, it's like, I don't know. I've never had a father. Like my dad died when I was 3. So not being led by a father, and I'll be honest, seeing my mother's resilience and just her being independent. So me feeling like, you know what? I don't need you. I can do this. I've done it before. Or I fell down. I got back up again. I'll do it again. I think it can be a sense of pride. I also think it's fear. You know, fear. So you're like running. It's that fight or flight. And then so the easiest thing to do is to run, because it's hard. Marriage is not what people... You know, for me growing up, I always felt like I wanted to be this princess, and I saw the wedding. We've all saw ourselves as a woman in the wedding dress on that wedding day. You don't see it the way that it's actually worked out. And when it gets hard, depending on what it is, if I feel like it was condescending, then you feel like I will not be spoken to that way. Like you feel like you have to dig your heels, and instead of softening, I tend to harden. I don't, you know, and so for me, I just think it's fear, and not seeing a man before me to stay. So I think it's just been the easiest thing to do, is just say that, you know what, let's just do something different, or I can't do this, or this is just, it's too much. I don't have the weight that I had before. Honestly, I know that I'm with someone who loves God, who wants the best for our family, who wants the best for me, but how I have to overcome it really is just submitting, like, and dying to myself, which then this process is difficult. It is hard every day. You have to really be intentional. I mean, even if I feel like it was a look, and I've been practicing it, I'll look and I'll say, I don't like the way you said that, or can you say that a little differently? Just the intentionality. I think I have to overcome it by being intentional and remembering why we got married, who we are, what the end game is, what the goal is for ourselves as partners, what the goal is for our children, and keeping that at the forefront of my mind, opposed to the challenges or the difficulties. When it's tough, that's what you see. When you're in the thick of it, you see what's tough. You don't see all the goals and the dreams and aspirations. And so I think to overcome it is really just dying to myself daily and being intentional.
The most difficult thing so far has been blending. for sure, you know, each having 3 kids coming into the marriage. And we both have custody of our children, so it's a full house. You know, different personalities, different cultural backgrounds, different upraisings. And then it's not like we entered into a marriage where she was single and I was single and this is first time marriage. We each have our own baggage and past experiences and hurts that we all brought into this. And you know, and as much as, you know, you want to be a whole person, that does taint your view in some ways. So like the past 7 months, definitely, like she said, there's not been a honeymoon phase. So like that's probably the biggest misconception. People when they see us, like, oh, it's a perfect couple, perfect family, like, oh, they're in the honeymoon phase. What honeymoon phase? We blew right through that joker. But we knew that going into it. Our eyes were wide open. It wasn't like, oh, we're gonna try to make this work. We knew it was gonna be work from the jump. And so we were grinding, we're still grinding.
Yeah, but I think knowing it was gonna be work from the jump and actually experiencing what that is has been difficult or challenging, because when you blend, again, you're coming with not only baggage from the perspective of having children, but also from your own past. And for me, being single before, or being married before, but the divorce ended, I think 2014 or so, you've lived alone, so everything you've done is alone and independent. And so then for me, it was also a struggle with trying to like be led, I guess, so to speak. You're like, oh, I'm ready to submit. I'm going to submit to my husband and all the things we learned in church. But to actually apply that, it's like, oh God, I know how to do this. I knew how to pay my own bills. I did this way. And so to come under, I think that was a challenge too. And also, just to be real, I feel like the parenting part is really tough, right? But the other parent gets the fun part.
The fun weekend.
You get the fun weekend. So they come back and it's like, oh, I went with mom and we went to the movies and we went to ride go-karts.
Or dad.
Or dad, right. And for us, it's like we do all of those things, but also just the reality of raising functional children is, no, you have homework. Mm-hmm. No, there's internet time. You earn internet time in our house. You don't just get to play video games all day, or when it's time to come down and do devotion, or when we have to watch church, or when there's time to do laundry or folding. And these things happen weekly. So it's almost like, for me, I get mom guilt, if I can be honest. Like, I'm like, dang, it's time to tell them to fold clothes again, to pick up this again. So then I kind of feel like a nag. So for me, I think blending is the most difficult.
I'm hard. I don't get any guilt. Do what you need to do. Handle your business.
Yeah, well, for me, that's the most difficult part, is co-parenting.
Yeah, co-parenting does have its challenges. I would agree with that. But I'd say more for me, the bigger challenge is, from just not only receiving, but also giving. Is putting, her before the children. And the same thing with, like, I feel like her putting me before her children, because in a marriage, there's nobody more important than your spouse, on the planet. It's God and your spouse, and then the children, in that order. And I feel like with blending, we've each known our children from the time that they could breathe. And so that relationship has existed longer. And so you feel like a deeper connection with your set of kids versus their set of kids. And, I'm the type of parent, I'm really hands-on father. And so like when I'm like getting in, playing with the kids and having a good time, it's the same thing with discipline. I don't hold back from anybody. I treat everybody the same. And so what that looks like to her, though, sometimes is, or I feel is, she's coming to the defense of her kids, and vice versa. If she's coming down on mine, it's like, well, you don't really understand because it's really like this, or they really mean it this way. And it's not to, not to make her feel like I'm defending them to her, or I'm prioritizing them over her. It's, it's just that blending factor of trying to understand each other and still make sure that, hey, there isn't like, we've not a kid trying to like, oh, well, I'm still my parents' favorite. They love me more than they love you. It's like, it's not to be pitted against each other from the kids. So I'd say like just having the grace, and for each other, and learning to put each other where we should be in the priority list.
And that's tough. As a mom, sometimes as a single mom prior to, and you know, he's a disciplinary, and I am too. I truly am. But sometimes you kind of come to the defense and you forget, like, if I'm honest, like, that's my husband and he wants what's right for all of us. But sometimes I forget and I'm like, whoa, too much, or not too much, or like, you know, I've probably coddled my children, and so then when someone tries to direct them, I can admit sometimes I'm probably not easy to deal with when it comes to that, or just making sure that we're not picking favorites, or, you know, it's just consistency. So I think, but I think I'm so attentive to it that it's almost probably an error, because I'm looking for something like, did you have a look at her? Did you know, so yeah, I can agree with that. Do you think the military and being a part of the military, being a leader in the military, has any bearing on you as a parent and as a husband in particular?
Definitely, I think it does, to the point that sometimes I can be non-emotional about requests or comments or anything else, because it's just matter of fact for me. It's like, hey, we need to get this done, let's do it. I don't ever think about like, oh, is my delivery too hard or too harsh? So I think for sure the you know, military teaches you dignity and respect for everybody, regardless of background, rank, color, creed, anything. It does teach you to respect the rank as well. So, you know, from a biblical standpoint of how we're raising our kids, what we believe in, you know, I really feel like it aligns a similar fashion, where it's like, I'm first in charge, you're second in charge, and then we have our soldiers, right? So yeah, it bleeds over, and I think more it bleeds over in like probably time, tone, and touch. I think one of the biggest myths about marriage is that a lot of people out there believe it's just like, you know, oh, I met somebody wonderful, we're gonna do great things in life together, and you know, it's just it's a partnership, and I can walk away from this anytime I get a divorce if it doesn't work out. And for me, that's a myth, because as I understand it, marriage is a covenant, and we had separation of church and state a long time ago, but this is one part of church that's always been a part of state, and it's gotten really muddled and confused lately. Also, part of that, you know, when we start talking about love, you know, a lot of people say they married for love. Well, love is not a noun. Love is a verb, and it's an action, and it's all about action. And I think that a lot of people are like, oh, we fell out of love, or, well, that means you stopped taking action in your marriage. And I think a myth is that it's just, you know, we get married and it's just somehow magically always going to work out, and that's not the case. It takes commitment and action and acceptance of your role and your part in everything. Whether you're to blame or she's to blame, like, every side is two-sided story, and you're responsible for your part.
I think it's just that marriage is always happy. I think that is a big myth. People think that marriage solves a problem. Like, I think I'm looking for a husband, I'm looking for a wife, and so once we're married,
I won't be lonely.
Like, life then, oh, there's a Band-Aid, you know, or there's some stitches to cover up. No, marriage actually exposes everything, like all your dirt, all your junk, and it exposes it to another human being who can then, I won't say use it against you, but it exposes you to another human who knows all of your stuff, all of your junk, and then it's your stuff and their stuff, and then we expect perfection. And so it's like, oh, we're happily ever after. People see the dates, they see the being dressed up, and they see the photos. And so for me, I think the biggest myth is just that marriage is a cure-all. I've gotten so many, like, I'm so happy for you, I'm so proud of you. It's almost like a period. Like, it stops. Like, I'm proud of you. Like, this is the accomplishment. You have arrived. You have achieved. And that is not true. Marriage is work. It's worth it. And marriage is fun. It is good. But it's what you make it. It can be hell. It can be hell on earth. It can be heaven. But again, it's what you put into it. And to Neil's point, love is an action. And so it's not this, I love you. No, it's I love you in spite of, because of, and it's after you've gone through some things and truly learning to love in the face of imperfection.